Welcome back to Legitimate Targets, everybody. I hope you're all having a great day. There is so much going on in Europe and Germany, and unfortunately, we had some bad election results out of Romania this week. But in Germany, there's still a very strong fighting force that I think is going to be finding themselves in higher and higher positions of power very, very soon. So joining me today is a special guest, Yuri Kofner. He's an economic advisor for Germany's AfD party, and he is a specialist in economics, energy, and digital affairs, all things which the current government and previous coalition in Germany did not get passing grades in, if I have to say. So, Mr. Kofner, thank you so much for joining me today. How you doing?
I'm just doing great. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
How would you explain the state of affairs with the German economy right now? Because Americans, we think we have it bad. Our cities are falling apart. Infrastructure is terrible. But how is it in Germany?
That's been quite interesting because I think the situation might be similar in some states of the United States as in Germany in general. But just to give you an overview or an understanding how drastic the situation is in Germany, we have a deindustrialization in Germany, a layoff of industrial workers, a production decline, industrial production decline, which we didn't see even during the last years of the Second World War. So even the bombings and destructions of the Second World War didn't cause so much damage in the past 5 years we had now in Germany. And I give the blame for that not only the recent, as we call it, government, which is the government made of the Social Democrats, the Greens, and globalist liberals, but also the past governments of the past 20 years. So also the conservatives, or as in the United States, it's called the rhinos, Republicans name only, the same problem here. So they're not real conservatives. I think the AfD is the only real conservatives. So what we see is that since 2018, industrial production, GDP, and so on, all the significant indicators, they have been stagnating. So about now, we should have been 5% higher GDP right now if the trend before 2018 would have continued, but we don't have it. And we have four major problems, as I would see it. We have high energy costs. We have high taxes. We have the second highest taxes in the world. Trump is doing just now the opposite. He's lowering taxes for his own people. We have, as I would call them, bureaucracy monsters from Brussels, but also from Berlin, from the federal government. So legislation, regulation, which is killing our economy, all, of course, under the pretext of climate protection. And we have a problem because of that, of those three main issues, I would say. Real German skilled workers, and we still quite have a lot of them, or we used to have, they are leaving in droves Germany. So, for example, every year, 100,000 Germans are leaving Germany in net. So they're leaving and not coming back. And most of them, 85%, 75% of them are skilled workers, high education, best working age. They are leaving. What we're getting instead is an importation of illegal immigrants, which are largely, first of all, they're illegal. Secondly, they are not highly skilled. And in the United States, we have this meme from South Park. They're taking our jobs. Well, we don't even have that problem here in Germany because they're not even taking away our jobs. They're just moving straight into our social system, So, yeah, it's quite bad here.
Where are these German skilled workers? Where are they going?
Well, in a part, they're going to the United States because of lower taxes. You have a different social system because that's why you also have lower taxes, but that's quite a large part. So they're going to the States, they're going to Great Britain, Austria, Switzerland, Anglosphere, but also a lot of them are going even to Eastern Europe, Hungary, for example, and even Russia. A lot of Germans are leaving to Russia now.
What is the situation on the streets? Because in America, we have so many homeless, like 600,000 of them. Have a lot of previously employed skilled workers in Germany found themselves in that sort of position, or is the welfare system providing just enough that they can barely stay alive and off the streets?
would describe the problem in a different aspect or different angle. So of course we have a different social system in Germany. Which has been a big achievement of the Bismarckian reforms. Otto von Bismarck, the evil emperor, as he is known in the United States, in modern Germany as well, due to the culture war, left culture war. But basically, what we see, as I said, is that the skilled German workers, which have relative, I would say, medium to high earnings, they are just leaving Germany because they say it doesn't make sense to work here anymore. It's getting too woke. I'm not getting enough money from what I earn in my pocket. It's all being taken away by the government. Security is declining. Infrastructure is crumbling. So those people are leaving Germany. Basically, they are not going on the streets. They are leaving Germany. What we see also is that all the asylum seekers, illegal immigrants, they are being so opposite to the United States, we have this called Königsberger Key, which means that all the asylum seekers have to be dispersed in every community. That's on one hand, that might be positive because, of course, you don't have those ghettos as you have in the United States. But on the other hand, you have even the smallest community out in the countryside. You now have every community has to stem a housing, a building for them being housed, and you have we don't have due to our social system, we don't have people uh, living in tents on the streets as you see in France or in the United States, but we have the refugees being placed in in housing buildings specially built for them, hotels being rented for them by our tax money, private houses, even villas being paid for them. Ukrainian refugees, well, I would differentiate between real Ukrainian refugees from Ukraine and fake refugees, illegal immigrants from Syria and Afghanistan. But still, it's still not fair that even those people, they receive people like Germans working all their life just to earn an apartment, and they come here and they receive a house with a garden. I'm not joking you. That's really happening in the countryside, and it's just unfair. And that's what we're seeing here in Germany. And also,
It's so
maybe if I
great.
might add,
Yes.
if I may add just one more point. So, and the other thing is now we had a reform in the social security system. It's called the Bürgergeld, citizens' money. It's it's typical left-wing euphemism of something quite bad being labeled as something good, citizen money. Yeah, why not? Which is basically the problem of that is that it is so high because you get paid 535 now 540 euros each month per person, then you get a child allowance, and then even your heating and your rental is being paid by the government. So if you work in the lowest level earnings, if you work 40 hours a week, both of you, so husband and wife work, you don't get more money or even less money than if you would have a family and just live off social security. And that is just not fair. And that's the problem we are having here.
And you mentioned the problem, especially with these illegal immigrants from Syria. I never understood it because now they've toppled Bashar al-Assad. So why don't they just send them all back to Syria now? Because this is what they were parading around in the streets of Europe demanding, that they topple Assad. And now they want to stay in Europe. I don't get it.
Well, it's for me difficult to understand as well. And the only logical conclusion you can come to, which is quietly being called an extremist view, that it's all being done on purpose. It's not being done to help those people, but it's being done to hurt us Germans. And, and it's even crazier when you think about the fact that when Christians and Alevite minorities were massacred under new Jalani government, who is he's an Al Qaeda terrorist. I don't know if he's still being officially searched by the European Union. He's being labeled a terrorist by the CIA. Officially, of course, yeah, I think cooperating underhand, but it's a different story. And there have been those Syrians living here in Germany have been held demonstrations on German streets celebrating the overthrow of the legitimate Assad government and celebrating and greeting, at least in a sense, the killings of Christians and Alawites. And those people are living here on our taxpayer money. It's just crazy. And, I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but there's no other logical solution. Just to say, well, the purpose of those people not being sent back, and they're not being sent back, is that they want them to stay here to dilute our culture, to hurt our economy and to destroy Germany. And that's what I'm saying is, we are not conspiracy theorists because the government is a conspiracy practitioner. They're practicing all those conspiracies in reality.
You have Syrian illegal migrants celebrating an Al Qaeda ISIS leader becoming president of Syria, and they're not labeled extremists. They're given a nice plot of land and a garden. But AfD is labeled as an extremist organization by the German intelligence. How far do you think this is going to go with them? I understand there's some court proceedings, but do you think it could eventually result in the outlawing of AfD as a party?
I think this is going to be quite difficult. I think the whole agenda against the AfD is a fact that, well, who is benefiting from this agenda, from hurting the only patriotic conservative force in Germany? It is not the quasi fake conservatives which are being really hurt by that, who are in the government now. It's still, or who are benefiting by that. It's especially the Greens and the left wingers, so the Social Democrats and left wingers, because you see the fact is that in every state now and at the federal level, the voters want a conservative right-wing government. So they want a government of the AfD and the CDU, CSU, or the other way around. And what I get because of this so-called firewall, which we have in Germany, which is basically the idea that the CDU, CSU will never cooperate with us in the parliament, they always get a minority government with the participation of the Greens and the Social Democrats and the left-wingers. And that's so they are benefiting from this whole agenda and discrimination against us. And the losers are not only the voters, obviously, our own people, not only the AfD, but especially, and that's quite interesting, the CDU, CSU, so as I labeled them, the fake conservatives, or at least in parts fake conservatives. And the whole agenda is, so that you need to understand this whole agenda against us, as labeling us as allegedly right-wing extremists and so on, and that we could be abolished. This all not directed against our voters, because the more they are doing this, the more we grow. We received more voters. We had like 1,000 new member appellations just last week because of this decision. So people are coming in droves into our party, and it's just benefiting us. But it is hurting the CDU, CSU, those conservatives, because it's like pointing the finger at us and saying, look, you cannot cooperate with them because they're right-wing extremists. And the problem for them is because they are so part of the system, and they're like, as you might know from the States, those old school conservatives which are afraid of the legacy media. They are not willing to step over the shadow or to think into the future. And so they're afraid because of that, as being labeled extremist as well, because everybody knows extremists. Everybody knows nowadays right-wing extremists. It's actually quite bad, because it's quite important, as for me personally as well, that we are against National Socialism. But now, since everybody is a Nazi, nothing is a Nazi. That's also another aspect of this. So, just to quickly return to your question, I don't think that this whole discrimination will go farther than that. They're at the last meters trying to stop us, but they cannot stop us. And in the end, what we will see is that the CDU-CSU will break apart in two parts: the one which is the left-wing woke part of the party, and the more conservative right-wing part, the basis of this party, basically the members of those party, and they will cooperate us, and we will build a government at the state level in the next year, I guess, and at the federal level, 2029, or even sooner than that.
Is there anyone in these mainstream establishment parties in Germany, even the fake conservatives, who are appalled by what's happening to AfD with this sort of labeling and the attacks that you've received?
Well, there are many people, especially at the basic level, so this basic member level of those parties, who undercover, or let's say if the cameras are out, they're saying, everything what you say from the AfD is absolutely true. Of course you're right, and of course we should cooperate. But they're still afraid because of being ostracized. You see, my example is I was detained by FBI in the United States. I lost 2 of my jobs because I became a member of the AfD. I was disinvited from participating at research at leading German research institutes as an economist, only because I support the AfD. And that's the same all over. People who work for the government lose their jobs, teachers or policemen and so on. You're being ostracized by family members. Everyone is cutting contacts from you. It's, of course, now it's getting better because obviously also already a quarter of the federal population is voting for the AfD. In Eastern Germany, it's even more. It's 30 to 40% now. But still, this problem remains, of course, and they are afraid of that. But when the cameras are out, members of parliament of those parties, they're saying, yes, you're right, and we should cooperate. And, last week I had a meeting with a very high level CSU politician, but I cannot tell his name because obviously then everything would fall apart and he would lose his jobs and his job or his position. And still the leading members of the CDU-CSU party, they are still making their political gains from this kind of fight against right-wing extremism. They and the problem for them is they went too far with it. They cannot move back from it anymore. In the last 10 years they said we are Nazis, now we are not Nazis anymore. That will be difficult for them um, to say that they were wrong, But on the other hand, maybe last sentence on that is that if you can count on one thing, is that for those parties, the CDU, CSU, those rhinos, fake conservatives, that there's one thing that they value above everything else, that is staying in power. So when they will see that they have no other option, they will cooperate first because they don't want to lose power. And that's the only stable thing that they have, unfortunately.
Why do you think it is that East Germany is so much more sympathetic to AfD than the rest of the country?
It's quite obvious. They lived under socialism for 40 years, and they lived under a dictatorship for 40 years, and they know when the government is lying to them. They know when the media, legacy media, or as we have it, public media, is lying to them. And they know when everyone is being labeled a fascist, because in the GDR, everyone who had conservative views, was religious, was against planned economy, was labeled a fascist, of course. And they feel it. They feel it. They have it in part of growing up, that they understand now that they are being lied to by the government, which is calling itself a democracy and liberal in the European positive sense, but it's not. It's we are living in Germany in a new kind of democratic dictatorship, or at least an authoritarian state, as you see it, a police state, as Marco Rubio called it when the Interior Service labeled us as extremists. We are, in a sense, a police state, and we are a woke dictatorship, in a sense.
I've seen polls saying that people who lived in the GDR are more upset with their living conditions today than they were back then. Do you think that it could also have anything to do with a desire for just basic economics, increasing industrial output, putting aside all this woke nonsense, and having a future for their families?
Yes, obviously that as well. You're absolutely right, because when the GDR became part again of the Federal German Republic, they were promised an economic boom. They were promised being as wealthy as the Western Germans, or it was perceived to be, and they didn't get it. Instead, there were a lot of mistakes made. One mistake was that the currency. The German currency was adopted right away without a gradual adoption process. And so the GDR economy, Eastern German economy, which was based more on labor than on capital, wasn't able to compete with Western German output. And a lot of people left immediately to Western Germany, and all those problems, they weren't solved. So what we should have had in the 90s, what should be a gradual adoption program, no shock therapy as we had in Russia. So countries which had a gradual transition, for example, China, or other countries which at least were supported massively by public investment as Poland. Poland was supported actively by the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund due to political reasons as a means against Russia. Those countries did quite well in the transition process. Now, Poland is one of the European countries which is growing quite well. In Germany, in Eastern Germany, this was not done, partially on because of the stupidity of those leaders at that time, partially because it was maybe malintent. But the fact is, yes, Eastern Germany still is now having people in Eastern Germany are learning 30% less than Western Germany. Living standards have declined, and at least the GDR wasn't woke, and the people, they knew that they lived in a dictatorship at least, and at least they had the good infrastructure. Well, now everything is the opposite. We have a crumbling infrastructure. Just in Dresden last year, the Corolla Bridge in the city center of one of the largest, most beautiful cities of Germany, collapsed in a modern industrial Central European country. It's unimaginable, but that's the state Germany unfortunately is in.
Moving forward for AfD, I mean, I've seen Alice Weidel debate against Sarah Wagenknecht, however you say her last name, and I thought she performed quite well. But how do you think average Germans feel about her leadership? Do you think that she or someone else potentially should be leading the party moving forward?
Mm. I think you need to understand we don't have only Dr. Alice Weidel as the leader of our party. We have two leaders. The other one is Tino Kruppalla. She is from Baden-Württemberg, which is southern Western Germany, a rich, wealthy, very middle-class state of Germany. She is an economist. She worked for various financial institutions in China as well. Global financial advisors. And Tino Kruppalla, he's from Eastern Germany, from Saxony, and he's before he came into politics, he had a small business, painting business, basically painting walls of houses, very middle class, and that is, I think, a very good mix that we have. So she is obviously, in a political sense, talking or speaking to those Germans who are from the middle class, and we still have a large middle class. She is also talking to the higher level, let's say, or entrepreneurs, because we are, as the AfD, the media, legacy media, is obviously labeling us not only as allegedly anti-foreigners, or but also they are labeling us as not understanding economics, populists. And when she is an economist and she is leading, and she has high level education, she's very skilled, she has experience. This message falls apart, that we don't have an understanding of economics. Also, she is a lesbian, which is another argument against the fact that we are being labeled as as homophobic. Because look at that, one of our leaders is a lesbian. Our position obviously is that we think that the traditional conservative family should be the center of society, should be the ideal. But if you are gay, lesbian, whatever, it's your personal choice. Just don't push it onto us with gay pride parades, with, sorry for the word, dildos being showed around to children. We don't want that. We don't want transvestites talking to our preschool children. But other than that, do whatever you want in your bedroom. And that's just what she's saying. And Dino Kruppalla, he's from Eastern Germany. He's lower middle class. He's a worker. And so he's talking to the workers, to the average Jack, and to Eastern Germans. And I think this is a quite good duo. And I think there wouldn't be another better option, because we have both parts in society in Germany, and we need to talk to both parts. And, if you look a little bit more into German history, politics, we call it völkisch. It's a very bad word, but it means that you need to try to combine both aspects, or several aspects. You shouldn't talk only to working class people, or only to business owners. You need to get all into one boat, because you are part of one people. So we are the Germans, we are Europeans. And that's why I think that's a good approach that we're having.
I do too, and I'm just very worried for the future of Germany, especially when we've seen this inability to get off the Ukraine bandwagon. And still, even when Donald Trump is trying his best to settle a score, bring peace, you still have Europe, Macron, you have, of course, Germany and many others that are trying to escalate still and send more missiles, send more Patriot battery missiles. Where does this all end for Germany if they don't decide to go down the path of what Trump and what Putin are trying to do, and instead continue to escalate the conflict?
Well, I might have a controversial view on this. I don't think that the warmongering of the European elites, Scholz, Merz now, Merkel, von der Leyen, and so on, Macron, I don't think that they are really risking a global war. What they are doing is they want to help the big financial corporations, BlackRock, Vanguard, because everything is all of the missiles and all of the armaments is being paid by loans given by those big financial corporations. They want to help the armament industry because there are the lobbyists because of them. Same as Corona was a big deal for the pharma industry in Europe, but also in the West in general. And I think this argument which I'm holding is that it is also supported by, I talked to various people, one of them who was under Chancellor Merkel, he was the main advisor for the Bundeswehr, the German armed forces. And he told me a view which I heard also from General Oberst Reisner. He's an intelligence officer of the Austrian armed forces. He's holding very interesting YouTube videos, also in English, by the way, on the conflict in Ukraine. Quite neutral, at least in the position he is, quite objective he's trying to be. And they're all saying the same thing. Ukraine always has been and will be supported only as much as to keep the war going. It's quite, as we are being labeled extremists within Germany, also the war in Ukraine, it's all very Orwellian. Yeah, it's all very dystopian. So the aim of the war in Ukraine is just to keep it going, to, of course, harm Russia, but also to help the big financial institutions, to help the armament industry, and also to keep control over their own societies. So that's, I think, what we're seeing. So I of course, the chance of a global nuclear war, of course, is being heightened by this, by the warmongering of the European elites. The same thing is, when we had Biden, we always could say it was the main initiative of this war came from the United States, from the Biden administration, obviously from the American armament industry. Now we see, actually, we even more see this warmongering from the European elites, despite or opposite to what Trump is trying to achieve. He's trying to achieve a peace agreement. His aims might be not as peaceful and let's say benevolent as some people would like to hold. If you look into the raw materials deal with the Ukraine, critical rare earth elements in Ukraine, and century bonds we now should have to buy, the whole tariff agenda. I think that's all part of. So Trump, in my opinion, if I may say that, he's not discontinuing, in a sense, the American foreign policy. He's continuing it, but more obviously and more straightforward, which I think is fair enough. He wants the Europeans to pay off the U.S. debt. He wants Germans to pay more for armaments, but he's trying to do more for his own people. That's a big difference from Biden. And so the aim of the war in Ukraine, and we will see that now, is to be continued in a sense that will make Germans pay more taxes, German government take up more debt, which is being channeled to BlackRock and Vanguard and so on, and buying armaments, which is being channeled to ThyssenKrupp and Krauss-Maffei and all the German armaments, and basically also United States armament, because the last 100 billion euro fund, which is a debt fund basically by the German government, which was installed in 2022 to finance allegedly the German armed forces. More than 60% of that money went to contracts with the United States. So obviously the deep state is trying to keep this war going because they're making a lot of money of it. And that's the sad and true and most banal basic fact about this war.
It's very morbid. It's insane how much money they're making off of all these deaths. But that is why we fully support and salute off these efforts. And I hope for nothing but the best for all of you in the near future. And I almost even hope that they keep attacking you guys in the way that they are, because it's just like Trump, and it's just like what so many even independent journalists face. The more you get attacked, the higher you rise, and the more trust you seem to establish, because no one trusts the globalist deep state anymore. So, Yuri Kofner, thank you so much for joining me today. Where should people follow along online if they want to stay up to date with your work?
Thank you for having me. They can follow me on X, Facebook, Instagram, all the basic social media.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.